Welcome to Moment Talk. I'm your host Shiso Moore. On today's episode, we have a gentleman that is a hardcore fisherman. He's from the Midwest of the 10,000 lakes, and yes, he's actually fished about 1,000 of those lakes already. He's been to quite a few competitions and actually won quite a few of those as well. He loved the passion of fishing so much, he started making lures out of his garage. Those who are in the local Twin City has bought some of these lures, and his brand, Khang Lures, aka KBL. Let's all welcome Danny from KBL. Are you looking for the latest Hmong-inspired menswear? Well, look no further. Shiso's Menswear makes suit accessories, apparels, and you can find them at www.xixomenswear.com. We are super excited today, guys. Guess what? We're going fishing. Is that what we're doing, KBL, aka Khang Lures? This is Danny we're talking to, right?
Definitely. Yeah, this is Danny Khang. That's what everybody calls me by is Danny. My given main name is Dang. For Dang in Hmong. So those who know me from when I was little, my real name is Dang. But growing up into the fishing world and everything, everybody's just giving me kind of like the name Danny. So now everybody kind of calls me Danny Khang.
For this episode, we're going to call you Danny.
Yep, that works.
We are super excited to have you on. I'm a seasonal fisherman myself. I know you're pretty hardcore into it. Obviously, you have your own brand. If those could see and watch, he's wearing his gear, man. It's pretty dope. It's all Hmong inspired and dope gear, man.
Oh yeah, I got the Hmong inspired shoulders. Gotta represent. Show our pride of the Hmong people. And showcase ourselves out there. That way, everybody kind of sees us Hmong people and kind of recognize us and know where we are, where we're coming from.
Awesome. So, Danny, how did you get into bass fishing?
Fishing has always been a part of my family. Growing up, from my grandparents, to my uncles and, my dad and others. My dad wasn't a huge fisherman, but my grandpa was, and he lived with us. And, they used to always take us out, locally here, such as like Como Lake, Balin Lake, Hudson and stuff like that. And it kind of just, the outdoor activities, such as hunting and fishing kind of just grew into us. We just kind of followed the footsteps of, my dad and my uncles and my grandpa.
Do you remember the age you first picked up a fishing rod?
I would have to say probably maybe 4 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah,
because that's definitely young.
I remember when I was like 7 or 8, I used to walk. I lived in Frogtown. I used to walk from my house to Como Lake at the age of 7 or 8. Back then, that seemed okay. When you look at the age now, it's a little scary. But back then, you used to walk that 2-mile trek, with your friends, go fishing at Como Lake. It's always been a passion of mine. I don't know how it came about. But it was very interesting, because everybody in my family did it,
You are located in 10,000 lakes. Have you fished every single one of
them? I wish I say I could, but I'd say I'm around like 1,000.
Whoa, that's a big fair number already.
Yeah.
If there's, we're gonna get technical. It's like 12,300, something like that. I almost forgot the number of Minnesota lakes. 1,000 lakes. You know what? What's your favorite top 3 lake of those?
Top 3 lake, I would have to say Mille Lacs is probably my number 1. Just because it has a very good fishery that anybody can go there and catch fish. My second, I would have to say, is Lake Minnetonka. It consists of like 10 bodies of water, 10 different lakes. And I put it up there just because it's very challenging. Each connecting lake that is part of Minnetonka has its own cool features, such as structure to watercolor, watercolor quality to everything. So every lake is a challenge, that's connected to Minnetonka, and that's why I put that up there. There's still a lot of big fish in there, and with all the pleasure boaters and all the other fishermen, it's always a great challenge, and that's why I put that up there as well. Because when I want to challenge, I go out there to one of the, to Lake Minnetonka, where it's a very tough lake. It is very rewarding when you do find the fish on Lake Minnetonka. But then again, like I said, it is very challenging. Uh, my third, I would say Lake Waconia. Um, that one, I put it up there as number three, was because back then when me and my brother fished in a tournament, we pulled in almost 32 pounds of bass just for 8 fish, and that was a record for our club back then. And it's always been a great fishery before we fished in tournaments, and when we were able to fish it as a lake in one of our clubs, we were super excited. Um, we did it 4 years in a row, I believe it was, and we won every single year. So it's one of my top lakes that I go, and I recommend for people to go as well.
We're gonna get back and talk about those competition tournaments, but why is bass fishing so fun?
Um, I think bass fishing is so fun just because um, there's so many ways of how you can fish for them. You could catch them striking your lure on top water. You could fish them in the middle of the water column, or you could fish them on the bottom, of the lake. So I think because you can do all that, um, and it's one of the best, fish that can actually relate to all three. I think that's why a lot of people go after them. They have this leaping ability that they can propel themselves, 3, 4 feet out of the water multiple times, during the fight of when you first catch it till you get to the boat, or when you bring it, to land it on shore. And I believe um, with that excitement, that adrenaline, everybody wants to seek that.
Out of those three striking, what do you like seeing the best? Bottom jigging or what?
I prefer top water. I
Oh,
love top water. The explosion.
yeah, me too, man.
Yeah, yeah. Fishing with frogs, you know what I mean. You never know when they're gonna come out and take it, and when they do take it, your heart is just racing. You're just waiting to set the hook and feel that big fish at the end of the line. Because you know that when you're fishing top water, 9 out of 10 times it's a big fish. It because you're throwing a big frog, so your chances of landing are something big.
Yeah, the bigger the water pop, the bigger the fish too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do you get I call it in the Midwest during the winters, and you're on YouTube or you're on like Instagram, you're watching these top water strikes, and I get like bass fever, and you're watching a video and you see a top water strike, and when they set, I'm like setting with them too, because I've been waiting all year to
Oh
for the
yeah.
top water. Right? Do you get that feeling
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, sometimes I get that feeling, because you're anticipating, especially that that 4, 5 months that you're cooped up,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so you're just waiting to get back out there, and yeah, like you said, we go on social media, and see the guys from down south that still
yeah.
fishing, or even old videos, and yeah, it's always a great excitement, when you're preparing yourself, for the next season, um, and it's always enjoyable. It's like a movie you could continuously rewatch, over and over and over again. It's just that excitement.
Indeed. Now, what kind of bait or lure do I need to get to start bass fishing?
For starters, the easiest, what I tell people is um a spinner bait or a stick bait. A stick bait is the general term, but a lot of people have called it Cinco because it started from Gary Yamamoto. That was his line, and he called that stick bait a Cinco. That was his name. Now everybody kind of refers it to as a Cinco or a wacky. When they refer to it as wacky, it's more of you hook that stick bait in the middle, um, and then when you jig it, the two ends kind of just fold in and out. So that's why they call it wacky rig, because it's not really the proper way of rigging it. So that's those two I'd say are the most universal and the easiest to get somebody who's interested into starting.
I gotta pick me some of that up, man. We're both in the Twin City here. I honestly have not out bass fishing because I just moved here like 4 or 5 months ago, and I just got my fishing license like the other day. Where can I go bass fishing, man?
Honestly, from shore, if you're talking shore, um, even though Phelan is really pressured lake, it has a lot of good fish that cruise the shorelines. Como is very under pressure. I would say go to Como. It's a lot smaller because you can actually jog, walk, and fish at the same time, and that can be said for Phelan as well. But Como Lake by Como Zoo, it'll probably yield you, give you, a better opportunity of catching, multiple fish and sometimes even good fish. Um, Como Lake has had a winter kill way back then, but now it's starting to recuperate with the proper stocking of the Minnesota DNR. They've done a great job of bringing back Como Lake, and so there's a lot of good healthy fish, bass, in Como Lake that can be caught.
I'll keep note of that. I'll definitely keep note of that and go out there and throw my hook in there.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about hooks, man. For like, let's say a Cinco setup, what is a 4/0 hook? Is that too big of a
Okay.
size for that?
Yeah, 4/0 means that slash means odd. That's kind of how they, distinguish the sizes. If it doesn't have so the way the hooks are sized, it goes from like 1 to 32, and then one slash whatever. So if you're just talking direct whole numbers such as 1 through, let's just say 10, 10 will be smaller. You're working your way, um, down to one being bigger. And then when you put that odd in there, one is smaller, and then you work your way up to like a 7/0, and it becomes really big. So it's kind of confusing to a lot of people. But when you look at like let's just say flies and stuff, they'll say number 12 hook, and then you look at another one, it says number 8, but how come is number 8 size hook is bigger than number 12? So it gets kind of confusing. But like I said, as a whole number, it starts from larger down to smaller. That's how you go by the size, and it's opposite as 1/0. So 4/0 is more for like Texas rig, or punching, flipping creature bait, um, for such as like I was talking about wacky rig. I would go with 1/0 or 1/0. That's what they call it. 1/0 is the ideal size.
Cool. I'll put that in mind and look for that hook. Um, we're about what into spring and summer now. Is it the post spawn or pre spawn already?
Right now, it's it's not. Well, okay. So generally, in the local Twin Cities right here, it's post spawn. You go a little bit further north, like an hour, 2 hours away. We're just at the peak of the spawn. There's still some coming in, but majority of the fish have spawned. The water temps in the northern lakes, let's say Mille Lacs, they're around 68 degrees. The lakes around here, they're more around 74, 75. So that's, you're sitting at the post spawn already. The fish are starting to move back, to their summer locations. Some of the other fish that spawn late, they're still babysitting their babies. The babies are averaging about half an inch right now, half inch to 3/4 inch. So they're right at the point where they're about to abandon the babies and head back out.
During these spawns, uh, the bass are super aggressive too, and they'll chase anything out of the waters. Sometimes they won't even react to a strike, even though you throw a Cinco in there, just trying to make them react to it. They just won't
Yeah.
take it. What would
Yeah.
you throw in there if you're coming from a boat?
From a boat, uh, the first thing I approach with is a jig. I throw one of my jigs, and what I do is I actually start with a finesse presentation. Finesse meaning I trim down the skirt, make it a little bit thinner so it's not so bulky, so it's not huge. And then I'll throw a trailer in there, such as a rage crawfish, or one of my KBL flappers, a little 3 inch, and I keep it compact but still big enough. And then I try to stay um, a pretty good distance, like 20 feet if I can, 20, 30 feet if I can. Um, that way, the rule of thumb is if you can see the fish can see you. And usually, generally, when that happens, you're not going to get bit. But there are ways to get it to bite, such as irritating the fish, um, finding the sweet spot on the bed that will draw that fish to take your lure. There is always a sweet spot on that bed that you can get that fish to. You can irritate and agitate the guarding male to take your lure.
Sometimes those are more like an attack, or more like a attack kind of on a strike versus a defensive strike. Because for
Yep,
example, you're throwing,
definitely.
yeah, you're throwing something similar to a bluegill pattern, right? And
Yep,
it just wants to chase off. It's not a hungry strike. It just wants a
yep,
reaction strike to chase off your so-called lure that looks like a bluegill, because you're trying to imitate like, let's say, a bluegill to come attack its fry. So it really is
yep,
just attacking back, and that's when it
yep.
strikes back. Correct?
Oh yeah, definitely. And what it's doing is is trying to kill whatever is trying to attack its baby. So out of protection. So when you throw your lure out there, if it was just trying to chase it away, it'll just kind of bump it. So sometimes you see fish kind of bump it, but when you irritate it enough, it will actually engulf your lure, and try to kill it, and then move it off the bed and spit it back out. And so if you want to learn a little bit, you could take a plastic, let's just say a Cinco, or wacky, or warm, and just tie it on there. Don't tie a hook or anything, and you could throw it out to a bed, and you can see it. They'll grab it, pick it up, and move it off the bed and spit it back out. You know, because they're trying to keep their bed clean, trying to keep the fries, safe. So that's what they do.
Right. It's not even again a hungry strike. It's just
Yeah.
a protection and wants to
Oh
move it.
yeah. Yeah.
I see. I see. During after the post spawn, do you find it pretty hard to track them down now?
Um. After the post spawn, it's um you resort to your summer spots when you have a boat. I have a boat, so I typically push off of the shoreline. I'm sitting, depending on the lake, but on average, you're sitting about 8 to 12 feet of water. If a lake has good structures, such as rocks, then you look for rocks mixed with weeds, and typically these fish will congregate on these rocks. Given that there's bait fish around. Otherwise, they will seek points. When I say points, where it's shallow and then it tapers and drops into deep water. That's like their safe haven. Where they can, if there's any danger, they could just drop back down to deep water. They'll come up, during the morning or at night. They'll feed up at shallows, and then they'll kind of back down. If there's any danger. So those are like the key areas. Such as like I say, when you're out in a lake and it's a brand new body of water, look for obvious landmarkers, like points, and curves and stuff around the lake. And so those are given easy um, easy spots that you can always try first.
You see, with what you're describing, these bass are kind of an ambush kind of fish, and they sit in structure, like maybe a log or a big pile of trees or rocks. Am I correct?
Yes, they are somewhat ambush fish, but they don't want to be classified as ambush fish. But if you really look at it, they do hide, such as in docks or under lily pads, and I think majority of all the fish that we fish in the freshwater are ambush fish. They do have to kind of protect themselves, and then when the forage, the bait fish does come through, they do jump out and attack. Um, I believe they classify northern pike more as an ambush fish because they're so aggressive,
Hmm.
you know, and that's that's where they get their name from. But bass, I still consider bass as ambush fish.
I mean, bass has another brother of a spotted and a smallmouth too, and I fish for for a spotted where I think spotted doesn't have much of a structure. They're just kind of go whatever, do whatever kind of fish.
Yep, yep. They sit out in the open. They like to suspend and roam out, in the big body, the basin, what we call a basin of the lake. And then when they do follow the bait fish, such as shad, herring, you know, shiners and stuff like that. They do follow those bait fish. And when they do come up upon, let's just say, a deep brush pile or a deep point, they will sit there and let the bait fish come in, but they are very mobile. They're kind of like white bass, they kind of move around quite a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about smallmouths?
Smallmouth, they're very tricky. They like very deep water. I've caught them down to 28 feet of water. Um, Majority of the time, they do average a little bit deeper. They're sitting about 18, 20. You know, they're to me, I think they're very challenging because you have to really find the correct lure to get them to commit. Um, they will chase your lure back to the boat or to the shore, but a lot of times they won't commit. They're
Man, sounds like that girlfriend I was trying to ask on a date.
yeah, it's very tough. The smallies are very tough when it comes to the summer bite. Um, when you do get them best is in the spring and the fall. That's when they're the most aggressive. And versus largemouth, they're more aggressive in the summertime because, well, they're aggressive throughout the year, but in the summertime it's not that hard to get them. Versus smallmouth. Smallmouth, they prefer kind of like a little bit cooler water.
In my honest opinion, I feel like a smallmouth is slightly more pickier in what it wants to eat versus a largemouth. Almost takes anything.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. But then again, like I said, it becomes seasonal, as how these fish react. But dead of summer, I would say largemouth are easier, and then it would be spotted, and then smallmouth.
When fishing, let's say bass, when should you use like a bait caster versus a spinning reel?
Um, Bait cast and spinning. Um, More so spinning wise, it's more of a finesse presentation. It's better when you're running finesse. Um, Lighter tackle, like 4 6 pound line tests, and little light lures like 1/8 ounce, quarter ounce. Little swim baits, little creatures, little spoons and stuff like that. When you or drop shot, let's just say drop shot. 9 out of 10 guys will run a spinning on drop shot, but as technology has evolved, a lot of companies have come out with these baitcaster, these finesse baitcasters, where they're small. You can cast crappie lures, and it's very palmable. It's very the it's you could say, um it's more comforting. You know what I mean? When you can hold a baitcaster, you just have that better grip. Some guys prefer that spinning grip. Some guys can never get away from the baitcaster grip, once they feel it. But like I said, spinning, I run for both, uh, for a lot of my applications. I've done jig fishing with spinning. I've done Texas rig with spinning.
What's the difference between fluorocarbon, monofilament, and braid line?
Okay, so braid is more of a, kind of like a nylon, um, fabric. Fluoro and mono is made up of, different types of plastic. Mono being, um, it's short for monofilament. It's just a plastic that has more stretch. Um, Mono and braid, they tend to float, whereas fluorocarbon, it's a sinking line. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. It's an in between a braid and a monoline. Monoline stretches a lot more. It floats. Fluorocarbon, it's a little bit stronger, so it has less stretch, but it sinks. Braid, it's got the strongest. It's got this what you call it, the least amount of stretch, but it's not as abrasive resistance as fluoro.
let's say if you're using a frog, what would your be a pick of line, a braided line?
Yeah, if I'm using like topwater frogs when I'm fishing in heavy cover such as slop, they call that slop, which is just thick weeds. I would go with braid. I typically run a 50 or 65 pound braid. That way you have leverage. When they start to dig down, you could horse them, you can bring them back out. Fluoro, some guys use it, but then you tend to go in like 25, 30 pound fluoro, and that's a pretty big line.
Honestly don't trust it. I still go braided. I'll still
Oh
go
yeah,
braided. Yeah, for sure,
definitely.
because it might snap because you don't know how thick the weeds are. You know.
Yep, definitely.
Now we got our fishing line. We got our rod. Now, so what kind of knot would you tie on there?
Not average. What I normally go with most of my setups is just a regular fisherman's knot. A lot of guys like polymer or a double polymer, because it's pretty quick. It's a small little knot, but it's a very strong knot. It's a very easy knot to learn. I think polymer knot is probably one of the easier knots to learn. Um, but growing up, I've always ran the fisherman's knot, and I've always trusted it. I did modify it a little bit, that way it doesn't slip on me. So what I end up doing is, I'll run it through the eye twice before I do my knot. That way you know that it doesn't slip.
You mentioned earlier about Texas rig. Can you kind of visually tell us how that would look like?
A Texas rig, what a lot of anglers do is they run like an off shank hook or a EWG hook, which at the front of the hook you got the eye, and then it kind of bends into like a 90. So it kind of bends down, and then it goes back to the round bend of the hook and the point. And with that little bend, that little 90-degree bend by the hook eye, what that does is when you puncture the center of the plastic from the nose, and then you bring it just back, just about, I'd say like a quarter inch, and then you pull it through the plastic. And then once you pull it through the plastic and the eye gets to the nose of the plastic, you turn the plastic and the hook eye. So now it sits on the little quarter inch wire before the 90-degree turn. And then it sits a little bit higher, and then you take the needle point, you lay it straight, and then you grab that plastic, you thread it, and then the hook, you can expose it on top of the plastic, bring it all the way through from the bottom all the way up, and then skin hook when the tip of the needle nose of the hook. That way, when you're running it through weeds, grass, or whatever, it doesn't get hooked up. Um,
So
so there's
this ideally be a plastic for maybe a worm setup or
yep,
a
a worm,
crab.
or yep, or even like a paddle tail swim bait. A lot of guys run that as well. So there's the off shank hook, and then you have your EWG hook. Your EWG is extra wide gap. So it has a really big belly, um, for plastics that are a little bit bigger. Those are a little bit easier to Texas rig, where versus like a regular worm hook. It's just a straight shank hook. It looks kind of like a bait hook, it's just an eye straight down and round bend. So those hooks, they're like the worm hooks. They tend to have a little plastic keeper closer to the eye, a little hook there where it kind of helps hold the plastic up to the eye. And then with that type of hook, you don't expose it. You just, pierce it from the belly, from the bottom up, about halfway, three-quarters away. And then when the fish grabs, when you set the hook, then it actually, you know, pops through the top.
With that hook. Now, what about a bullet weight? Is that needed?
A bullet weight is good if you're fishing a little bit deeper, or if you're throwing into heavy cover and you wanted to get through to the bottom where the fish are, because typically the fish are underneath. Usually, when you run a Texas rig weightless, you're fishing open water, scattered thin weeds. But when you run the bullet, you're trying to contact the bottom or trying to contact the weeds and make a little disturbance. so you can get the fish to hear it and see it and come to it.
So pretty much you're would say you're covering a really deep, thick, weeded area. You're punching through with the weight because what the help weight's going to help out with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's you have weights from like 1/8 ounce all the way up to 2-3 ounce. And it all depends on the type of structure you're fishing, the area. If it's scatter weeds or if it's rocks, sand or whatever that you're trying to um, fish.
Cool. Why should I practice catch and release?
Catch and release is it's highly pushed amongst um, all anglers, new and old. Um, the reason why a lot of anglers push for that is so that we can um, keep the fishery of a body of water at a um, high quality as well as high quantity. Um, but just strictly catch and release, it can hurt a fishery. It can hurt a body of water because if everybody does catch and release, there's not enough food for the predators to maintain their size, the weight and everything, and so the fish become stunted, and they won't grow because you're overpopulated, So catch and release has its pros and cons, but catch and release does provide the future anglers, like such as our kids or our youth, to you know see what we're seeing and catch what we're catching in the future.
You mentioned earlier about spotted, smallmouth, and largemouth. What's the difference?
Um, largemouth, they as in um, generalizing area wise, they're more of a shallower, type of fish. They're more green. They have a really defined um, black bar that runs through the center of them. A smallmouth is more brown. They have different types of tiger stripes or patterns along the side of the body. Not no two are ever alike. Whereas largemouth, they have the same pattern. Spotted bass, it looks similar to a largemouth, but when you look on the side of the belly, you'll see these little black specks, black patterns on close to the belly, as well as their jawline. If you close their mouth, their jawline is like in the middle of their eye. I mean, most guys don't distinguish it that way. A spotted bass is more, the mouth is a little bit smaller, so that's one of the dead giveaways.
With all the fish you've caught, how can I tell if I have a bite, man? You sure it's just not a tree or thump or whatever it is?
um, what I tell people is hook sets are free, so if you feel something at the end of your line a little different, like if you're reeling in open water and it was just very smooth, right? And it all of a sudden it starts to get heavy, it doesn't hurt to just set the hook, if you're just casting and reeling. If you're like dragging it on the bottom, um, you feel something heavy like sitting there. What I'd always tell other anglers that I take out is you pull back a little bit, and if it pulls back, that means you got a fish. If it doesn't pull back, that means you're probably just hanging up on some weeds or a rock or something. Um, Sometimes you feel that little thump or that little, they call it tick, where your line jumps or the rod tip jump, those are really aggressive bites, when the bass really inhales your lure. But sometimes you don't feel anything. Sometimes it's just like really mushy, or you just feel the weight, it's just like somebody's just slowly pulling your line away, or the boat's moving, or the current's taking your line. That's how I kind of tell anglers, that's kind of how you distinguish between rock, or weeds, and the gear that we've been, blessed to have from all these great manufacturers has really excelled, uh, upped our game for the anglers in um, distinguishing bites versus back then, because back then rods were not as sensitive. So you really had a good feel for it to understand and catch fish. Now things have come a long ways. The high modulus graphites that rod manufacturers are are building with, it has increased the sensitivity, so we can feel everything. And now, like weeds and rock feels like bites. So a lot of guys are setting hooks on nothing. I mean, I take a lot of I take youth as well as a woman, fisherwoman, I take them out, and I try to show them, how this, works and all that. And when I'm taking them fishing like weed lines, they feel weeds, or if I'm taking rocks, they feel rocks, and they're setting hook all the time. I'm sitting back giggling, but I like to see that, because that means that they're paying attention. They're feeling stuff. So it's a good laugh, but it's also a good experience.
You talk about feeling. Have you ever pranked somebody? Let's say someone's sitting at the front of the boat and you're coming from behind, you slightly tap the back of their rod.
Oh yeah, we've done that. On some of the slower days. We've done that. We tap the back of the rod butt, or we've purposely crossed their line, and we just yank their line, and then they feel like they have a fish, and they're they're setting the hook. So we've done that quite a bit.
Oh, can I catch a big bass from shore?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. It's all um place, right time.
Okay.
And from shore, I'd say your best opportunities are like channels connecting lakes, or a little bit of current, or if you can find lily pads or weeds. Those are your best opportunity, best places, high percentage spots where those big fish will come in. And early morning and evening are your best windows to try to land yourself, 5 6 pounder, maybe even a state record. The state record is 8 pounds 15 ounce from Minnesota. So we have seen some pretty big fish in some of these metro lakes, that can surpass 8 9 pounds.
Since we're in the topic about biggest bat ever caught, what is your personal biggest bass ever caught?
My biggest actually came from California. It was a few years ago. Me and my family, we happened to go on vacation to visit, some family over there. And me and my wife and my son, we made it a trip to go to Sacramento. We were staying down in LA, and we flew out to Sacramento. I had a good friend out there that, took us out. It was right in the April time, and um, the fish that I caught, it actually wasn't meant to be mine. I was, trying to give my son and my wife a chance to catch this big fish, and I was throwing it elsewhere, and all of a sudden, I feel my line jump, you know, and so I just set the hook, just to see what it was, thinking maybe it was a smaller fish, and it turned out to be this 10-pound largemouth that I was trying to get my wife and my son to catch. And so, I mean, I don't know if it's luck or what it was, but I'm very thankful to catch it. And it was a great fight. It got wrapped up in some laydowns. We had my partner, my friend, he had to stick his whole arm down there. It was like 8 feet of water. He had to stick the net and everything down there to net the fish. And it was a great experience. I didn't mind catching it. I like I said, I did want my wife and son to catch it before I did. It's always been my passion is to, because I've learned enough already, and so it's always been my passion to pass it on to the youth and to the ladies as well.
Six, 8 pounder in California, or 6 to 8 is very common for California for a catch. But man, it's a struggle for Minnesota.
Oh
Six
yeah.
pounder, I can see you catching a 6 pounder, maybe one or two a year, but that's a struggle. We're talking you have to fish a lot just to catch a 6 pounder out of Minnesota. What's
Oh
your
yeah.
biggest in Minnesota?
My biggest in Minnesota is 6.5, and that
Yeah,
that came
see.
on a tournament as well.
Oh, what?
So
That's some bragging. I had a tournament too.
yeah, it was during a tournament, so it was a very very lucky fish. I did catch that fish 2 weeks prior to the tournament. There was actually two 6 pounders that we caught pre-fishing prior to the tournament, and we caught them both. But the other one lost some weight, and it was 5.85. So it was just like point 0.15 shy of another 6 pounds. So yeah, I mean, pre-fishing does help quite a bit. Like I said, I've caught a couple of 6 pounders in Minnesota, but those are hard to come by.
I kind of figured too. My personal best in Wisconsin was shy of a six. Yeah, shy of 6. So, and we're talking. I've been fishing. I don't know how long, and just to
Mhm.
get a 5.5, shy of a six is that's a struggle already.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's always um, it's always a great challenge, and like I said, it's always a struggle. One year I did come pre-fish Green Bay for one of the tournaments there, and I was on the Fox River, and I did see a largemouth that I would say easily pushed 8 9 pounds.
Whew.
Yeah,
Saw it, but didn't take it.
yeah. I left it alone because I
Yeah.
saw it, and I left it alone because it was 1 week before tournament, so I left
Well,
it
let's talk
alone.
about tournaments now. You fish, I don't know how many countless tournaments. You won a fair amount of them. Have you ever competed against other Hmong anglers, maybe like Trevor Lowe or other anglers that are really
Um,
high up there too?
Trevor Lowe, he's up and coming angler. So he just came in, no, not that long ago. I was fishing since back in like 2004. So I've had a lot more years and experience over, guys like Trevor Lowe. He is a great angler. I haven't competed with him on a regular basis. But I have competed in a few tournaments while he was in there as well.
When competing in competition, I'm sure I always know that you always pre-fish to get kind of an idea where the fish is going to be staging. Am I correct?
Yes, I mean the pre-fishing it's very draining. Depending on the year, sometimes you get lucky. Some pre-fishes you catch maybe one, two fish. In a tournament days, you catch the winning bag, and then sometimes it's the opposite. You know, I've had tournaments where I pre-fished for 2 weeks straight. I caught nothing but big fish. My five fish was 19, 20 pounds every time I went out for 2 weeks straight. Come tournament day, the cold front came in. We only brought in 13 pounds. So,
A
uh,
different day is a different lake, even though it was the
oh
same
yeah,
lake.
yeah, definitely.
Now, let's talk about this. Can you help maybe open the minds up for a wife or a girlfriend that has a husband or a boyfriend that is a fish addict? Because some women either hate it or love it. Could you please give an open, talk about that? Open the minds of a woman that
Uh,
why are we such love to fish? It's an addiction.
the I believe the biggest thing about fishing that us guys do, and the reason why we continue to do it is because it's very relaxing. The outdoors is very relaxing. It's a time where we can actually get away from everything, from work, from all the stress and everything. Not necessarily getting away from, the wife, the spouse, girlfriend, or the kids or anything. It's just one of those where you just want to clear your mind, just want to get out there where you have nothing to worry about, and I believe um, that plus the excitement of actually catching fish, that also helped relieve some of that stress. So I believe a lot of this, anglers or our guys, we go out there, it's just to lift some of that weight off of our shoulders. When we're having a bad day or a bad week. You know.
For the Hmong women out there, you got your 2 cents for another angler that's a hardcore fisherman. And I would agree with you on that too. Is just to have a lake, a rod, or boat, and just fish without just being. It's a stress reliever. That's
Oh
how I
yeah.
feel about it.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you another thing here. What does it mean to be a Hmong man?
What does it mean to be a Hmong man? Um, it's a tough question. I'm very proud of being a Hmong man. Um, I've been raised uh, in a Christian home, and so growing up, there's a lot of struggles. Um, Sometimes you hated those struggles because you were different, but now that I've grown up, you learn to accept those differences. Whether if it's height difference, skin color, um, to our accents, to our ethnicity, everything, and I've learned to accept that, and I'm very proud, and it helps when you have friends of other Hmong as well, that you help each other grow up, you help each other accept who you are, and be proud of who you are, and that you're remembering that even though we may be different on the outside, when we bleed, we still bleed the same. We are still human beings, you know. We are still taught to love and respect each other, no matter what background we come from.
You mentioned earlier about teaching a woman to fish or teaching your kids or also students or the next potential angler. Can you give your advice for those who wants to be the next professional angler?
My advice to the up and coming anglers that are very interested, um, I'd say, continue to study, stay in school, because knowledge is key. You have to have knowledge to be able to continue to move forward, because fishing is not just about casting a line out there and getting lucky or whatever. You still have to have knowledge. You still have to have book smarts. You still got to know math, because you still have to calculate everything, such as your gas, your income, because when you start to do this, it becomes part of your financial, um, what you want to call it, what do you call it, your income. So when you fish professionally, it becomes your income, and if you don't stay in school, you won't have the knowledge to work out these numbers, to help each other out, um, and also continue to fish with everybody. Be open minded. Don't just limit yourself to a friend, a brother, a father, or whoever. Um, the more you reach out there to other anglers, the faster you learn, the faster you will excel, and be at the top of your game.
Thank you for the wise words. Now, lastly, KBL, Kangaroo Lures, Danny, where can we follow you? Where can we find you? Please give us that quick pitch.
All right, I am on Facebook, Cambro Lures. I'm also on Instagram at Team KBL. I also have a website. It's kangbrolures.com. That's my last name, KHANGBROLURES.com. You can always reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram. If anybody has any questions, or whether if it's about my lures, fishing in general, just anything fishing. I'm always willing to help. I'm always trying to pass on the knowledge that I've learned, and it might not be a whole lot, but I'm trying my best to pass on what I have learned from all the anglers I fished with, from my grandpa, my dad, from everybody. And so it's a passion of mine to see another person happy. Like I said, my passion right now is to make sure that the ladies enjoy this sport as well. And so I'm always promoting the ladies to fish with the guys, and I'm pushing the guys to bring their ladies as well, not just their kids, not just their son, but their daughters as well as their wives. That way you can all enjoy together. You don't want to just be alone by yourself on the lake, all by yourself. You always want to have somebody to conversate with. It just makes the whole day better. Especially when you can build these memories with your wife and your kids. If you don't have kids, if you have a wife, take her out, girlfriend out. Be patient. You can learn a thing or two from each other. And when you work together, everything goes better.
Well, thank you. We are so appreciative of the time of being on our podcast. In the meanwhile, fish on, brother. Fish on.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me on here. And like I said, anytime you want to conversate again, let me know, and we'll get back out here and speak some more. And definitely, like I said, we can definitely fish as well. I'll be happy to take you out.
Well, that ends our episode. If you haven't yet, visit our website at www.momenttalk.com or find us on Facebook, Moment Talk. Lastly, if you're listening on us on a podcast from Stitcher or Spotify, Google Play, or iTunes, please give us an honest rating. One last thing, we want to give a shout out and DJ Peter for allowing us to use their song and beats. Thank you so much. You can check them out on YouTube.